Hey everybody, it's me, LavenderTowne, and before the video starts, I just want to say I have a plushie out with Makeship. It's supposed to be the character from this channel, and I think she turned out so cute, so if you want to get one of your own, there's a link in the description. I don't want to waste too much time at the start of this video, but I really wanted to tell you because I've never been so excited about anything that has ever been associated with this channel, so yeah, please check it out if you want to. Alright, let's watch the video. Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about bad art advice. I've always thought that unhelpful advice or advice that pushes you in the wrong direction is worse than no advice at all. So I wanted to tell you guys some things that I used to follow that I feel like didn't help me or actually made me have a harder time, so that maybe it can help you too. So the first piece of advice I see experienced artists giving to young artists all the time, and I received this when I was starting out as well, and that is basically just practice. This is something that a lot of people say when someone comes up to them and goes, "Oh, how did you become so good at art? How do I become good at art? I want to find my style, I want to get good at anatomy," and the experienced artist will say, "Oh, you just have to practice, just draw a lot." I know that this is coming from the right place, but I would say that if someone is a brand new beginner, it's not helpful to tell them to just practice. I feel like it's kind of also a little snobby, like it's assuming that the person you're talking to is not practicing and that they're just lazy, but I find that young artists are often extremely prolific, and beginners are usually really excited about drawing, so they're already drawing a lot. What they're probably asking is a more complicated question. There's probably something specific about drawing that they're struggling with, and they don't really know how to articulate that yet. But what you can do is, if someone comes up to you and is asking you how to get better, try to ask them some questions back, like, well, what specifically would you like to improve? Because drawing is not just like one skill, it's actually a series of different skills, like your skill of observation, and then your ability to do things like perspective are completely separate from your ability to like stylize. When we tell somebody to just practice, we're leaving them to try to figure out on their own what that means, and they might even end up getting some bad habits or picking up unhelpful things like really bad how to draw books. I know that I learned drawing like the first time with a really bad Christopher Hart how to draw book, and I don't think it did any lasting damage, but I definitely think if I had had some sort of guidance from someone and they had pointed me in the direction of like some better drills and things to do, it might have made me better faster. Now, just to be super duper clear, I'm not saying that practice is bad or encouraging newbies to practice is bad. Of course not. I'm just saying that when someone's asking you a specific question, they really want advice, it's almost definitely not the kind of advice they're looking for. Not necessarily because they're lazy or they lack the grit to become an artist, but probably because they just don't know where to start, because drawing is such a huge skill that involves so many other things, and it's really hard to tackle. Like when you're starting from scratch, like figuring out where to even start is a whole challenge in and of itself. So we should try to be more compassionate and helpful to beginner artists. This next piece of advice is a sizzling hot take that is going to be maybe unpopular with some people. I know this is a controversy, honestly, in the artist community, but it is the piece of advice that you should learn the rules before you break them. This is one of the most common things I hear levied at cartoonists. A lot of people say that before you learn to stylize anything, you have to completely understand everything about realistic drawing. Now, I totally understand where people are coming from with this, and I believe this very strongly. When I entered art school, I was basically completely convinced that all of the cartoon drawings that I had done before art school, before my life drawing classes and things like that, that basically was damaging and it wasn't legitimate because I hadn't learned the rules, so-called. The problem with this, I find, is that when you switch over completely to doing realism and won't allow yourself to do other styles or try to stylize, you can actually lose your ability to stylize. It becomes harder because it's actually its own skill. It seems like a lot of people who prefer realistic drawing think that if you become good at realistic drawing, of course you can draw cartoons. But truthfully, it's actually a completely different, completely distinct skill. It will help you, obviously, but if you aren't stylizing at all, you're not practicing with like exaggerating forms or changing things, leaving details out, adding details in like a cartoony way, or just even in an experimental way, you can literally start to forget how to do that, and your art will become stiff and you will be overburdened with information. Because when you're doing hardcore studying of like anatomy, we're talking like muscles, sinews, like really, really breaking things down in a very granular way, it becomes very difficult to then a year later jump right back into cartoony stuff and like being really whimsical. So I have always thought that you should learn these things in tandem together. I think that if you learn and practice stylization at the same time as you're learning and practicing anatomy, perspective, those kind of things, it actually they reinforce each other. It's symbiotic. I genuinely feel like the year of art school I learned the most was when I had life drawing classes in the same week that I also had illustration classes and classes about animation, where I was allowed to do my own cartoony style all the time. It really helped both of those skills build on each other and made both of them more enjoyable. And lastly, I think the idea that you can even learn the rules in regards to anatomy, perspective, realism, that kind of stuff, and just be done at any point is crazy anyway. Since there's always more to learn and always more ways you can improve, the whole concept doesn't make sense to me. This next bit of advice is more technical, but it's something that has bothered me ever since I was in high school or middle school and I saw how the art classes were done there. Basically, a lot of people say that you should try to copy photographs, like copy down photographs, and that will teach you how to draw, basically. A lot of people suggest this as like a first starting point when you're learning how to draw, and there's a lot of problems with this, especially with the method that a lot of people use. Sometimes people will use a photo reference for like a specific part of their illustration, and that makes perfect sense. You should do that. Like genuinely, it will help you. I should do it more, frankly. But when people are just copying photos, especially photos that were like taken on like a phone, or edited and filtered on like Instagram and stuff, when you're like copying down like a beautiful e-girl's face, that's not super helpful. And especially because a lot of people do it by making like a grid. They did this in middle school all the time in the actual art class. They would have the students copy down like a big grid on a big piece of paper and then have a small photo and then have the grid on that. And basically you're just filling in all the grid spaces with the lines that you're seeing of the person's face or whatever your photograph is. This is not a great way to learn how to draw, because drawing is really about understanding shapes. And when you're filling in the grid, you're usually looking at the photo piece by piece and thinking mostly about the line. And you're comparing it based on the placement inside the grid. But what you should really be thinking about, if you're looking at like a person's face, you should be thinking about their whole head, like down to the back of their head, even if it's not showing in the photo. You need to be thinking about the shapes so that you can think about it in 3 dimensions. You need to think about the shape of their nose, not the shadow line that their nose is making, but the actual shape of the nose itself. You won't be able to do like any intuitive drawing from your head by learning this way. You will always need photo reference, and I feel like unless you want to be a professional copy machine, it's not really helpful. Some advice that I got in art school that was actually really good advice is that you should always be using more than like 3 photo references to make your image, especially if you don't want to run into like copyright problems if you're doing something professionally, obviously. But like, yeah, if you're constructing an image and you have reference photography, you want as many references as possible so that you're using them for like little details and like checking on yourself to make sure that you're having like a rich, filled out, well-drawn piece, but not that you're copying like 1 or 2 pictures. Next up is the piece of advice that almost ruined my life and made me quit art. This is the worst thing ever, and I don't know why people keep saying it, and there's even still videos of people defending this worldview, and it just drives me absolutely crazy. And that advice is to stop drawing blank. You can put a ton of different things into that blank. Usually it's some type of art form that's either associated with another country, particularly Asia, if it's associated with something like feminine or cute or young, so it's anything that like kids or women might be more inclined towards. Like, it's okay to draw graphic novels as long as they look like Watchmen, but it's not okay to draw graphic novels if they look like Steven Universe or Adventure Time or a kid's book. as if those aren't legitimate art jobs that people can sustain their entire lives on. I genuinely don't understand, as somebody who's gone to art school, and particularly art school that is supposed to train you for the industry, why there are students and teachers who still believe that there is no place for learning stylized cartoony art. Now, I'm not talking about drawing anime in your life drawing class. I don't think that that's a good idea. You're not going to get as much out of the class. But in scenarios like my painting class, where supposedly we were allowed to use whatever style we wanted, we just had to show a understanding and an ability to use the tools that we were working with and to convey a story. I don't understand why I got reprimanded for painting something in a stylized way. Especially because some students that she praised didn't even paint any specific subject, they just did abstract art. And it's not like I hadn't shown her that I could do realism before. Our very first assignment was a portrait of our own faces, and I got a really, really good grade, and she was really impressed. I was really happy about that, but it didn't stop her from basically saying something pretty insensitive and racist about anime and Japanese people and grading me down because she thought my painting was too anime. This is a painting, by the way. I don't think it's a great painting, but I do think that I didn't deserve to be marked down for the reasons that I was. But it was that kind of stuff that caused me to not draw in my own style or even experiments in any styles outside of semi-realism or realism for a whole year. And it made me feel ashamed of the entire body of work that I had done prior to school. And I really think that that might be part of the reason why so many people drop out of my college, because I think getting told that there's no value in the art that you're drawing and that you should never draw that way again is so extreme and so overboard. And at the end of the day, it's just bad advice. Thank you to all of my patrons, including Abnormal Crap, Ambrose, Best Kaiju, Lion, Christopher, Clockwork Construct, Dark Jelly, Dr. Casket, Larry Louie, Emily Borgoing, Fabletel, Juliana Davis, Griffix, Hidden Squid, Ice Cream Pal, Yvonne Rodriguez, JJJ, John Mosket, Joseph Copel, Lauren, Liliana Hammond, Maria Costa, Mr. Dr. Pants, Mia Lavali, Nicole Ludwak, Nicolette Queen, Nora Cornelison, Hugh Musgrove, Rainwater Pearls, Rune Raincrow, Snow White, Some Mediocre Artists, Sparky Plays, The Becky, Tom David Johansson, Trace Subaki, Violet Zirkelbach, Yaboyasti, and Yume Lily.